For years, The View has thrived on chaos, screaming matches, viral moments, political takedowns. It's all part of the show's DNA. But no one expected what happened this time. 1 second, Joy Behar was in control, dominating the conversation like she always did. The next, she was ripping off her microphone, slamming it on the table, and storming off the set in front of millions of live viewers. The audience sat frozen. The co-hosts stared in shock. Producers scrambled behind the scenes. The meltdown was instant. The fallout even bigger. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Twitter exploded. News outlets rushed to cover the disaster. But as the dust settled, one question loomed over ABC studios. Had Joy Behar just destroyed The View? What happened in that explosive moment? How did one conservative guest turn the entire show upside down? And most importantly, was this the day The View finally lost its grip? Let's break it all down. For years, The View had perfected its formula. Conservative guests would come in expecting a debate, but instead they'd walk straight into an ambush. The co-hosts would talk over them, mock their points, and shut them down before they could even finish a sentence. The audience, stacked with the show's loyal liberal fan base, would cheer on every attack. It was predictable, it was routine, and it always worked. But something had been shifting. Ratings weren't what they used to be. Viewers were getting tired of the same one-sided arguments. Clips of conservative guests getting shouted down weren't going viral the way they used to. Instead, people were starting to call out the bias. Even longtime fans were beginning to question whether The View was still about discussion or just about controlling the conversation. And inside the studio, the tension was growing. Joy Behar had always been the enforcer, the one who kept things in check, but lately she was on edge. Staffers had noticed it, producers whispered about it. She wasn't just debating anymore, she was taking things personally, cutting off conservative guests faster, interrupting more aggressively, getting visibly frustrated when things didn't go her way. And it wasn't just Joy. The network was feeling the heat too. Social media was calling them out. Critics were saying the show had become nothing more than an echo chamber. Advertisers were watching closely. Something had to change. Producers needed a big moment, a clip that would go viral, bring in viewers, and remind everyone why The View was still relevant. So when they booked Karoline Leavitt, they thought they had the perfect setup, another conservative guest, another easy takedown, another viral moment. But what they got was the beginning of a total disaster. From the second Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the set, something felt off. This wasn't like the usual conservative guests who came in nervous, defensive, or unsure how to handle the ambush. Karoline was different. She wasn't rattled. She wasn't hesitant. She wasn't playing along. She walked onto that stage like she already knew how this was going to go. The audience, expecting another easy dismantling, shifted in their seats. The co-hosts exchanged glances. Even Whoopi Goldberg, who usually leaned back and let Joy do the heavy lifting, sat up just a little straighter. And then there was Joy. She had that smirk, the same one she always had when she thought she was about to control the conversation. She thought this would be like every other time. She had no idea what was coming. Karoline took her seat, calmly adjusting her microphone. No fidgeting, no nervous glances. She was ready. The producers in the control room watched closely. They had set the stage for yet another viral takedown, but within minutes it would be clear. This wasn't going to be the clip they expected. It started like every other conservative guest segment. A few loaded questions, some passive-aggressive remarks, and the usual attempt to trap Karoline into a response they could twist. But Karoline, she didn't fall for it. She answered calmly, confidently, without hesitation. And that's when Joy Behar's demeanor shifted. The smirk faded. Her tone got sharper. She leaned in, cutting Karoline off mid-sentence. "Let's be honest, Karoline," Joy scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "People like you don't actually care about democracy. You just want to control people's lives and push your outdated beliefs on everyone else." The audience gasped. Some clapped, others shifted in their seats. The tension was real. But Karoline? She didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, a small, knowing smile creeping onto her face. "Oh, I see how this works," she said, voice steady, completely unfazed. Joy wasn't expecting that. "You all sit here and talk about fairness, but the second someone challenges the liberal narrative, they're the bad guy, right?" The audience fell silent. Even Whoopi glanced toward the producers. Joy rolled her eyes. She was irritated now. "Don't twist my words," she shot back. "We're just calling out hypocrisy when we see it." Karoline leaned forward slightly. "Great," she said. "Then let's talk about hypocrisy, Joy." And just like that, everything changed. The second Karoline said it, "Let's talk about hypocrisy, Joy." You could feel the tension snap like a rubber band stretched too tight. Joy froze for half a second. The smirk was gone. This wasn't going how she planned. "You sit here every day," Karoline continued, her voice calm but cutting, "calling conservatives dangerous, extremists anti-democracy. But the second someone pushes back, you scream misinformation and demand they be silenced." The studio went dead silent. Even the audience, usually quick to cheer Joy on, wasn't sure how to react. Because Karoline wasn't yelling. She wasn't flustered. She was just telling the truth. Joy's fingers tightened around her cue cards. "You know what?" she snapped, waving a hand. "I don't need a lecture from some—" "You once said conservatives should be shamed into silence," Karoline cut in, not even letting her finish. "How is that supporting democracy?" Joy's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Karoline didn't stop. "You mock people of faith, ridicule anyone who questions your beliefs, and call people stupid for holding different views. So tell me, Joy, who's really trying to control what people think?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You conservatives are all the same. Always playing the victim, always whining about being silenced." Karoline just stayed still, watching her unravel. Joy's voice was rising. Her hands were moving more aggressively. She was losing control. "You come onto my show and try to tell me how things work?" she snapped, shaking her head. "You have no idea what you're talking about, sweetheart." The second she said that, the entire room shifted. The audience, the co-hosts, even the producers watching from the control room, they all felt it. This wasn't just a heated debate anymore. This was a meltdown. Whoopi glanced toward the producers, realizing this was spiraling out of control. But Joy wasn't done. "You MAGA types love to twist things," she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "You love to make yourselves the victims while you're the ones trying to destroy democracy." The second the words left her mouth, she knew she had gone too far. The audience stayed frozen. The co-hosts stayed frozen. And Karoline? She just smiled. Joy's face was red. Her hands were clenched into fists. The cue cards were crumpled in front of her. Karoline slowly picked up her microphone and spoke 5 words that ended everything. "Joy, you're proving my point." And then Joy Behar snapped. She ripped off her mic, slammed it on the table, and stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. "I'm done with this," she shouted. And right there, in front of millions of live viewers, Joy Behar stormed off the set. For the first time in The View's history, Joy Behar was gone before the segment even ended. The second she stormed off, the entire studio was paralyzed. The co-hosts sat frozen in their seats, their faces a mix of disbelief, panic, and pure awkwardness. Whoopi Goldberg's mouth was slightly open as if she was about to say something, but nothing came out. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the producers. Sunny Hostin folded her hands, trying to act like she wasn't witnessing a total disaster unfold in real time. The audience, they didn't know what to do. Usually, when a conservative guest got shut down, the crowd erupted in cheers, clapping on command. But this time, nothing. Just a few nervous whispers, a few people looking at each other, waiting for someone to start clapping. Nobody did. Karoline, still seated, hadn't moved an inch. She didn't react. She didn't gloat. She just sat there, completely unbothered. She slowly adjusted her microphone, then glanced at the remaining hosts with the same small, knowing smile. It was Whoopi who finally broke the silence. Okay, she muttered, forcing a stiff laugh. "We're, gonna take a quick break." Cut to commercial. The moment the cameras cut, producers rushed onto the stage. Crew members scrambled, earpieces buzzing with frantic orders. Nobody knew what to do. Joy was backstage, pacing furiously, waving her arms as she ranted to a producer. "I'm not sitting there and being disrespected like that," she fumed. "Who the hell does she think she is?" She ripped off what was left of her microphone pack and shoved it into an intern's hands. Meanwhile, on set, one of the producers leaned over to Karoline. We're going to cut the segment short," he muttered, trying to salvage the situation. Karoline just smiled. "No problem. I think I've said enough." Inside the control room, ABC executives were losing their minds. "What the hell just happened?" one producer shouted, flipping through the camera angles. "We need to get ahead of this," another muttered, already drafting talking points for the hosts. Someone pulled up Twitter. It was bad. Clips of Joy's meltdown were already circulating. The internet had seen everything. The hashtags were piling up. Hashtag Joy Meltdown. Hashtag The View in Shambles. Hashtag Karoline Wins. And the worst part? The clip wasn't just trending with conservatives. Even liberals were saying this looked bad. For years, The View had controlled the narrative. But now, they had lost control of their own show. The moment the cameras cut, the real explosion began. Not in the studio, but online. Within minutes, clips of Joy's meltdown flooded Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Conservative commentators wasted no time posting reaction videos, while liberal audiences sat in stunned silence, unsure of how to defend what had just happened. The hashtags started trending almost instantly. Hashtag Joy Meltdown, hashtag The View in Shambles, hashtag Karoline Wins, hashtag Whoopi New Host. Meme pages went into overdrive. Screenshots of Joy's furious face were plastered everywhere. When you invite a conservative on your show and they come prepared. Another showed Joy storming off with the caption, "When the argument isn't going your way." But the real damage, the unedited clips. Millions of people watched as Joy lost control in real time, shouting, slamming her hands on the table, and ripping off her mic like a frustrated reality show contestant. And Karoline? She was the perfect contrast. While Joy unraveled, Karoline sat there, calm, composed, and completely in control. That was what people noticed the most. Ben Shapiro posted, "Imagine claiming conservatives can't handle debate, and then storming off your own show." Tucker Carlson called it, "The moment The View lost all credibility." Even Elon Musk chimed in, tweeting, "They always run when they're challenged." Meanwhile, ABC's social media team went completely silent. No damage control, no carefully worded posts, nothing. Because what could they say? The clip was everywhere, and the longer they stayed quiet, the more people realized. This wasn't just a bad segment. This was a total collapse. Inside ABC's headquarters, it was full-blown panic. Producers had dealt with controversies before, heated arguments, controversial guests, viral moments, but this was different. This wasn't just Joy Behar snapping. This was the entire show losing control, live in front of millions. The phone calls started immediately. Advertisers were furious. Some were demanding explanations. Others were threatening to pull their sponsorships. A few were already pausing their deals, waiting to see how bad the fallout would be. "We need to contain this," one executive muttered, scrolling through Twitter. "This is spiraling out of control." Another slammed their laptop shut. Too late. The meltdown was already trending worldwide, not just on conservative platforms, but everywhere. Inside the boardroom, ABC's top brass huddled for an emergency meeting. "What's the response?" someone asked. Silence. There wasn't one. Damage control options were on the table, but none of them looked good. Option 1. Have Joy apologize on air. Too late. The clip was everywhere, and Joy wasn't the apologizing type. Option 2. Downplay it as a passionate moment and pretend nothing happened. Impossible. This wasn't just an argument. This was a complete meltdown. Option 3. Shift the blame onto Karoline. Risky. Karoline hadn't done anything wrong. She didn't yell. She didn't attack. She just sat there and let Joy self-destruct. Then came option 4, the one no one wanted to say out loud. "Do we cut Joy loose?" A long silence filled the room. Joy Behar had been with The View for decades. She was part of the brand. But after this, she was becoming a liability. One executive sighed, rubbing his temples. "We need to make a decision fast. Because if we don't..." He turned his laptop around, showing the live view count of Joy's meltdown clip. 40 million views. And climbing. "The internet will make it for us." The executives knew what that meant. ABC had always controlled The View's public image. Now they were watching it slip away in real time. Social media was running the story, and every second they hesitated, the situation got worse. News outlets had already jumped on it. Fox News, Joy Behar, storms off The View. After getting destroyed, Daily Wire, Karoline Leavitt humiliates Joy Behar. On live TV Breitbart, The View collapses on itself after guest pushes back. Even neutral outlets were running with it. CNN, Joy Behar leaves The View set. In heated debate, MSNBC, unexpected walk-off leaves The View. In awkward silence, New York Times, Joy Behar's abrupt exit raises questions about The View's future. And then there was the one headline that made ABC executives' stomachs drop. TMZ, did Joy Behar just end her own career? That was the real problem. This wasn't just bad press. This was spiraling into something permanent. Inside the boardroom, executives checked their emails. Advertisers were pulling out faster than expected. 3 major sponsors had already paused their partnership. If more followed, the financial hit would be severe. ABC's legal team wasn't waiting for permission. They had already started reviewing Joy's contract. We need a statement, now. The PR team scrambled, but no one could agree on the message. Do they stand by Joy? Do they let her apologize? Do they fire her? But before they could finalize anything, another update came in. The clip had just hit 50 million views. One executive leaned back, rubbing his forehead. Yeah, he muttered, she's done. The decision came faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, ABC executives had made up their minds. The meltdown wasn't going away. The backlash wasn't slowing down. And the advertisers? They weren't waiting around to see how bad it got. There was only one option left. Joy Behar had to go, but firing Joy Behar wasn't as simple as cutting a contract. She had been with The View for decades. She wasn't just a co-host. She was one of the show's most recognizable faces. Letting her go meant admitting they had lost control. So instead, ABC did what networks always do in situations like this. They spun it. That morning, a carefully worded statement went live on The View's official social media pages. After many years as a valued co-host of The View, Joy Behar has decided to step away to pursue new opportunities. We thank her for her many contributions and wish her the best. The internet immediately called out the lie. Joy Behar didn't step away, she was fired, and everyone knew it. The response was instant. Hashtag Joy Fired started trending before the ink on ABC's statement was even dry. Conservative media celebrated. Fox News, Joy Behar fired after meltdown on The View. Watch the moment that ended her career. Daily Wire. ABC cuts ties with Joy Behar. Karoline Leavitt's calm response exposes the show's hypocrisy. Tucker Carlson. So much for tolerance, huh? Even liberal outlets were struggling to spin it. CNN. Joy Behar announces departure from The View amid controversy. MSNBC. Behar leaves The View. A shocking exit for the longtime co-host. The Washington Post. Joy Behar's exit sparks debate over free speech in media. The View's official pages? Silent. No tribute video. No thank you segment. Nothing. Because they knew. The more they acknowledged what happened, the more people would watch the clip. And the more they watched, the worse it looked. And Joy, she was nowhere to be found. She didn't tweet. She didn't release a statement. She didn't show up for interviews. For the first time in decades, Joy Behar was silent. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. She had spent years building her reputation as the outspoken liberal firebrand who could take on anyone. She had survived countless controversies. She had outlasted co-hosts, political shifts, even network shakeups. But none of that mattered now. Because for the first time, Joy Behar lost a battle she couldn't spin her way out of. Producers scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. The narrative had already shifted. Joy Behar didn't just walk off her own show. She walked off the stage of daytime television altogether. And the person who didn't even have to try? Karoline Leavitt. She didn't go on a press tour. She didn't do a victory lap. She didn't even post a long statement. She just retweeted the news of Joy's departure with one sentence. Guess walking off wasn't the best strategy after all. That single tweet exploded. Millions of likes, tens of thousands of retweets. News outlets picked it up instantly, because while Joy Behar's career had just ended, Karoline's had just begun, and The View had just made the biggest mistake of its existence. Back at ABC, the fallout was just beginning. The remaining co-hosts were shaken. Whoopi Goldberg, usually the most unbothered presence on the panel, looked exhausted. Sunny Hostin was reportedly furious with how Joy's exit was handled, feeling like the network had abandoned one of their own. And Sarah Haynes? She didn't say much at all, because they all knew the truth. Without Joy Behar, The View would never be the same. And the ratings were about to prove it. The first episode of The View without Joy Behar was an absolute disaster. From the moment the cameras turned on, the energy was gone. The usual snarky back and forth? Missing. The over-the-top confidence from the remaining co-hosts? Shaken. The audience, usually quick to cheer on command, felt off. Producers tried everything to keep the show moving. They avoided politics, steered clear of Joy's meltdown, and filled the segment with fluff topics. But no one was buying it. It was like watching a sinking ship. The conversation felt forced. Whoopi Goldberg, usually the most dominant presence at the table, barely spoke. Sunny Hostin looked like she didn't want to be there. Sarah Haynes forced a smile, trying to keep things upbeat. But the awkward tension was impossible to ignore. Then came the worst moment. The audience didn't clap, not because they weren't told to, but because they didn't know if they should. Producers were signaling for applause, but it wasn't working. The timing was off, the energy was dead, and for the first time in a long time, The View felt powerless. And then came the ratings. The numbers hit ABC's desks that afternoon. It wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Viewership had plummeted. The drop was so steep that some insiders thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. Audiences weren't tuning in like they used to. The viral moment with Joy had drawn millions to watch the clip, but it had also exposed the show for what it had become: a scripted echo chamber, a place where opposing voices were mocked, not debated. And now that people had seen The View lose control, they weren't interested in watching anymore, and advertisers took notice. Calls started flooding in. Sponsorship deals were quietly being reconsidered. A few brands pulled out completely, not wanting to be associated with the mess. Behind the scenes, ABC was in full-blown crisis mode. Meetings were held, calls were made, and rumors started spreading. Some staffers claimed that Whoopi Goldberg was considering walking away. Others whispered that Sunny Hostin was furious at how Joy was thrown under the bus. One anonymous insider even leaked a behind-the-scenes clip from a commercial break. In the video, Whoopi can be heard muttering under her breath, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." The clip went viral instantly. #WhoopiNext started trending, with thousands of people speculating that Joy Behar was just the beginning. And inside ABC, the panic was growing. Because they had seen this before. A show built on controversy can only survive as long as people believe the drama is real. But now, The View was exposed. It wasn't a show where bold opinions clashed. It was a show where one side dominated until someone finally pushed back and won. And without Joy Behar leading the charge, there was nothing left to hold it together. Karoline Leavitt's calm dismantling of Joy's argument had done more than just win an exchange. It shattered the illusion. Viewers saw it, sponsors saw it, even the remaining co-hosts saw it. And ABC? They were watching the empire they had built for decades start to collapse in real time. Because for years, The View controlled the conversation. But now, the conversation had turned against them, and then, as if things couldn't get any worse, the leaks started. Anonymous sources from inside ABC began talking to reporters. One insider told a conservative outlet the higher-ups were blindsided by how bad this got. They thought firing Joy would help instead of making it worse. Another spoke to a mainstream publication and admitted, "The hosts are walking on eggshells. Nobody knows what's going to happen next." And then came the most damaging report of all. According to multiple sources, Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin were already discussing their exit plans. At first, people dismissed it as speculation. But then, a new leaked clip surfaced online. This time, it wasn't from a commercial break. It was from a closed-door conversation between Whoopi and a producer. In the footage, Whoopi is seen shaking her head, looking exhausted, and then, clear as day, she says, "I'm done with this. I don't know how much longer I can take it." That one sentence set off a media firestorm. Hashtag The View Collapse started trending immediately. Twitter, YouTube, and news outlets went into full speculation mode. Was Whoopi leaving next? Was The View about to implode? Could the show even survive this? And inside ABC? Executives were scrambling to figure out a way to save it. But deep down they knew the truth. This wasn't just another controversy. This was a total collapse. Because if Joy Behar, one of the most untouchable hosts in daytime television, could be forced out over one viral moment, who was next? The View's monopoly on the narrative was over. The audience wasn't buying the spin. The internet wasn't letting it go. And as the network scrambled for a solution, it was clear they had lost control for good.